I'm going to let you present. Can you share your screen?
It says I can't while somebody else is sharing.
You can't. Oh, am I? Okay, hang on a second. Stop sharing. There you go. Okay. Now let's see. You should be able to present. Okay. And again, thanks everybody for your patience with us on this view. Oh, we're in full screen. Okay, good. Full screen. Okay. So Bob, go ahead. Robert, I'm sorry. Go ahead and take it away.
Okay. Welcome everybody. I'm Robert, product manager for the Innovation Suite platform. And what's exciting for me today is to talk to you about something that I think is a long time coming, something that we talked about when we initially started building the Innovation Suite, but never hasn't come to fruition until recently, which is bringing the Remedy as a platform and Innovation Suite as a platform together as one consolidated set of capabilities that work seamlessly together. We're calling that convergence. It's not done yet, and you're just starting to see if you've had a chance to take a look at any of the releases since 2102, you started to see us moving in that direction. 21.3 is probably the first kind of really big push in that direction, where we're making now a converged Remedy and Innovation Suite available to customers, both not just in our SaaS offering, but also on-prem. So this is really big for us. I hope it's exciting for you guys as is exciting for me. We talked about this years and years and years ago. For many of you that have been around, the common faces, that this was what our plan was. We put that on hold for a number of reasons, but now we've returned to it and gone full force. And I'm going to show you some of the things that you can now do with the converged server that you couldn't do before, or you could do, but it was difficult. It was challenging because we're talking about different environments. So this is kind of the look of what probably Darius was talking about. My pictures are not going to be as cool and detailed as his. This is my, product management simplified brain view of how everything works together. But this is kind of how the environments were set up before. Each of these boxes really was a separate stack, both for on-prem deployments and in SaaS. In fact, for on-prem, we didn't even have Innovation Suite available. It was just Remedy. You could use Smart IT. You obviously, you use Dev Studio for your building your custom apps and doing customizations. Again, super simplified. You could probably pick apart this and say that's not really how it works, but just kind of a feel for Smart IT was a separate thing running that had access into ITSM and all the capability in ITSM. It previously wasn't that great for highly customized solutions of ITSM. We fixed that with the progressive web view application capability, so that was refreshed. We haven't changed Dev Studio. That's still a thick client that sits on your local machine that points into your instance of AR system. Innovation Suite could be run side by side before with Remedy, but there were two sets of foundation data. This is just one example of why this was complicated for us and for you guys. We tried to solve that by saying, well, look, let's say Remedy, because these are two different instances, let's say Remedy is the source of truth for foundation data, and let's just push all the foundation data from Remedy into Innovation Suite. Data sync is never a great thing. It's going to have problems. It's going to have misses. The structure of the foundation in Innovation Suite was different because we decided when we started building Innovation Suite, we made some decisions about how we wanted foundation to behave with inheritance and associations and everything. So there were some mismatches that just caused all kinds of problems. Everybody hated it. It never worked really well. And a lot of this was just really problematic. You could do things like, and I'll show you like an example in the demo when I get to the demo. You could do things like access AR forms in Innovation Studio through remote record capability, kind of like similar to vendor forms. You could do that. It was kind of ugly because you had to do all the mappings yourself. And so it was a mess. And so it didn't work that great. DWP yet again was another server running DWP separately that also had hooks into ITSM. So that was difficult for us to manage, and it was difficult for you guys to leverage. So we wanted to fix that. So convergence. Convergence means now, I don't want this picture to make you think it's one big server, because we've gone microservices, we've gone containers. So Darius might have shown you some slides that shows that architecture. I actually have a architecture slide I can show you that actually shows what the real architecture looks like from our architect's perspective. But from my perspective, from a product management view, it looks like one big thing, right? It feels like one big thing. It works together. You now have one foundation data that's running on top of all the capability, the IS core services capability, AR system. They can interact with each other. You can still use Dev Studio to go in and customize forms and build custom apps. You can use Innovation Studio to build your own apps, or the things that we built on Innovation Studio. Smart IT, that's PWA driven now, still works with Remedy. So that if you were to just not even look at Innovation Suite or Innovation Studio and what it can do, your Remedy still looks identical, hasn't changed. That's what Darius was saying about, the big takeaway is AR system and Remedy hasn't changed. That's not going to change. This is our view forward. We're going to continue to leverage both of these things, essentially running in the same set of services in the same container deployment architecture, and we're going to build more and more capability for apps that are running in AR system and apps that were built in Innovation Studio to work seamlessly together. And so what I'm going to demo for you today is a couple of things, or an app that actually I demoed a while ago to show off the previous picture on, hey, look how great these things work together. Well, they didn't work together that great. Now they work together great. And that's what I want to show you. No more synchronization between foundation data. Everything looks like it's working well together. And like I said, we're looking at more and more capabilities that are kind of up in the app layer, like foundation, to maybe bring down into the core platform and make them kind of core platform services. I think SRM and SLM are good candidates for that we're taking a look at maybe in future releases, talking about making them a common core capability that you can use across. Approvals is another one that we're in the process of working on. So we have some approvals that you can, the approvals engine down here is available on both sides equally. So we're looking at ways that you can build things that work across the kind of the two different sides, if you will. Here's that architecture diagram. So that's what it really looks like in SaaS. These are all our containers and how we deploy it. I can't tell you everything that's going on here because I'm not an architect. And this might be a whoa kind of picture, but this is how our architects see our SaaS deployment environment. So I wanted to show you this because I didn't want you to get a feeling. It's just, like I said, one server, one behemoth thing that's running all these things. It's actually a whole bunch of stuff. It's a bunch of containers running different things that work together in a containerized approach. Okay. I'm going to jump over to the demo part of this and walk through what does that mean for you and why is it different. I have two sessions. I have a session on Thursday. Today, I'm going to go through, it said I'm going to go through the process designer portion of this. I'm going to show you some stuff, but I'm going to show you kind of more of a one direction, like how does Innovation Studio apps, how does it see AR system? And how do you work with AR system forms in Innovation Studio app? In the session on Thursday, I'm going to show you the other way, like how do you, from an AR system-based app, leverage stuff that's in Innovation Studio? Like how do you trigger a process from an Innovation Studio-based app to use the process instead of building workflow in AR system? You want to maybe use a process in our process designer in IS to run a process to manage things. You maybe want to leverage custom components. So I'm going to show that on Thursday. So I hope you'll come to that. And I don't know if it's going to take the full time. I think I'm in the way of your lunch. So maybe it's okay if I end a little early. I don't know.
Or go over.
Or go on. Well, no, I'm not going to go. I don't think I'm going to go over. Okay.
I don't know how to make that go away.
I have to move it to a different place.
Oh.
Did it stop sharing? Stop sharing. I accidentally clicked stop sharing. No, it's still sharing. I don't know what's going on. Okay.
Click on more. I think you can make that hide meeting controls, hide floating meeting controls. There you go.
Okay. So I did this demo a while ago, probably a couple of years ago now, where I showed you could use Innovation Studio based view to rebuild something in mid-tier, like the support group management console. So this isn't all set up anymore, so I'm going to have to. And be mindful. Go ahead and be mindful of the URL. Right, I'm actually in mid-tier, and my domain is, this is a demo environment in our SaaS infrastructure. And you'll notice when I go to Innovation Studio, it's the same domain. So it looks and behaves like one complete environment together, because it is. Okay, so this is a really basic, right? You guys maybe are familiar with this. Support group management console. I can add and remove support groups. I can add and remove people from support groups. Why am I? Oh, I didn't have to refresh. There's people in the support groups. So we get asks all the time of, how can I freshen up my my app, and I want to make it using your new, redo it using your new UI. And so the demo was about how to do that. And this demo was built back when they were two separate environments. So the support group manager, I had to use these, in order to do that, you had to use these external records, and you had to map these external records. And I'm not going to go through the demo, but it's complicated, right? Take the external record, you point it to your external remedy instance, map all the records. You had to know what fields you wanted. You had to know what the ID field was, and make sure the ID field was mapped correctly for it all to work. And then I built the view. I can't even run this now because it's just so broken, because I didn't set it up in this environment. So the UI itself had to refer to those external records that were, again, acting like vendor forms. So they're using APIs to access the data, and it worked, but it was complicated. So, and for instance, a real example of this was the process. If I look at the process, this is a really simple process. This process is to create the, there you go. It's weird, I can see it way before you. Was to add, when you add a person to the support group, you basically, the core of it here is this create record, where it's basically adding a row to this person to support group association form, which is basically an association table. But because of the foundation data sync and some fields were missing, I had to do funny things like, oh, I need data that's in the, I need to look up the person ID in order to add that row to the form. And it's just, you know, and I had to make sure that I found that person, and it was really just a mess. So I'm going to rebuild this process for the new app. Here's the new app. Let me run it. So just like the one in mid-tier you saw, there's all the support groups. I can select a support group. I've got the tab below, the detailed information, the people in support group. Down here, did I select the same one? Which one did I select over here? I selected accounts payable. Let's use the same one so I can show that it works. Where's accounts payable? Accounts payable. So I could select people, I could delete them, I can add a person, but I didn't build that process yet. Here's the add a person. It's a blade that comes in. It shows me all the people in Petramco, so I can add someone. But right now, that doesn't work because I didn't build the process. So I'm going to build the process. I'm going to show you the difference of really why that's different. Because again, I don't have those external records. So I'm going to go build a new process. Okay. I need the, what do I need? Actually, I'm going to drop in the create record element. Okay, and this create record is going to do okay, I have to wire it up. And here are the big differences. Now, I'm going to bind this to a record. Here's the records that are local. Now, if I go to all records, it used to be that you only saw the bundles that were in Innovation Studio. Now you'll see a whole bunch of stuff here, and it should start to look familiar. So what I want to do is I want to add a support group association. I want to add a record to the support group association form that's in CTM, right? So I'm going down to CTM, and it's just there, right? I don't have to do anything. Support group association, there it is. I didn't have to do all that mapping. It's just always there because they're running in the same environment together. Now I know, okay, here's the things I need. I need a login ID. I need the name. I need the login ID. I need the person ID. I need the association role. I need the support group ID. So those are the inputs to this process I need. So I'm going to go and add those inputs.
My video keeps showing up there. So
and my own notifications are showing up. How do I? Okay, it's okay. So I'm going to add a bunch of inputs. Full name. Login ID. What was it? Person ID. Support group ID, right? And I think the support group role. Just double check that on here. It needs full name, login ID, person ID, support group role, support group ID. Okay. So now I just say, okay, those inputs I just created, I'm going to use those inputs for this. For this element. Login ID, the input login ID, the person ID is the input person ID. The role is the input role. And support group ID. And that's my process. Way easier. I don't have to worry about the funny foundation stuff that was weird because there were mismatches in fields in the foundation. I can look up, you'll see that in this whole app, you know, I'm referring to a lot of AR system forums in this app for the UI and how it behaves. But I just wanted to give you an example of how easy it is to set that up. Okay, now my process is working. I go to my view. This was that tab view. There's that add button, right? And now in the add button, I need to add to create a launch process. And I want it to happen before the refresh. And the process is that new process I just created. And now I need to pass it in from the button. I need to pass it in those values. So the support group ID is the ID of the selected row of the support group grid up above. The name is the name of the person in that blade that came in. So when I select a person from that blade, and that's this one. Oh no, it's from the action open view there. That's the results of the blade. I can show you how that works, but when I select a person in the blade itself, I'm outputting values from the selected person in the grid that's in that blade. And that's what these are. So I want the full name of the selected person. I want the login ID of that selected person. And I want to pass in the support group role. And that was selected in that blade. There's a little drop down I created in that blade for the support group role. And I want the person ID of the person that was in that blade. I'll show you the blade real quick, so you know where those values are coming from. Okay, I save that. We go back to that select a person blade. You can see here the selected person blade has a grid and a drop down for the role. I'm actually, this was pretty complicated too. I had to build an external record that points to a sys vendor form for the menu data. There's a menu data sys vendor form that has on, and then I had to filter that. And this, I don't have to do that. I can just point at that menu form, and then actually I built a named list that pointed at that sys vendor form, and then I filtered the named list for the values of the support group role. Really easy. I could probably do I could probably build this app in this whole demo if I
You can drag myself all the way down to the bottom if you want.
There you go. Anyway, so that's this. So the outputs here of this view are the selected persons, that all those attributes that I need to add that person to the association form. I just want to show you where they were coming from. I'm not saving. Anyway, here's the app now. I have to refresh it. And I don't know if you've seen all the Angular stuff. This is all Angular now too. All the UI and everything's now on the latest Angular. Okay, so what we were looking at, accounts payable, right? Isn't that what it was? We're here, accounts payable. So let's go to accounts payable. We scroll down to the support. Oops, have to people in the support group. Let's add a person. Let's add Alan Albrook. No, did I do something wrong?
You pointed ID instead of support group ID. Support group ID.
Oh, I did. Oh, I didn't. Okay. See, somebody's paying attention
So it's
in the
rocket
process.
scientists.
Yeah. Oh, you're in the,
When you match your variables.
when I pass into the process, right?
Right.
I did the wrong one. So it's in the view. Yeah, you're right. Sorry. I got too excited.
You were rolling. Right?
Yeah, that's the GUID of the, yeah, that's not the right thing. You're right. Let's support record editor support. No, the grid support group, first selected row. Support group ID. That's it. Thanks.
I want to see if you had it right.
Okay. I had a backup just in case. I could just reload the whole app because I knew I was going to screw something up. Okay. Accounts payable, people in support group, add a person, select Alan Albrook. No errors this time. Boom, there's Alan Albrook. Let's look in here. Refresh this. Oh, there it goes. Refresh that. Look, Alan Albrook's there.
Nice.
And again, right, they're the same environment. 126, 126. So they're not two separate environments that we're pointing back and forth to doing all that mess. It's one converged system now.
React, try to add the same guy twice.
Can you repeat the question, Robert?
If I try and add,
Twice, the same group.
I've never tried that. What's going to happen?
Because I think the question was, is remedy workflow going to fire on the background when that gets inserted, or is it just going up the database level?
Yeah, this is telling me there's already an entry there, so it won't do it.
And that Maris is coming from the remedy filter.
That's coming from a unique index.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Yeah.
So is there a workflow you can put in there that will help determine if it matches, take no action, how it works?
So I like that question because you're now talking about when you're using workflow in AR system or using process. I could have done that in the process. So I probably should do it in process and say, if, look up and see in my, this is a really dumb process I built, right? In this process, I should have said, yeah, look up and see if do a get record, see if that one exists. And if it exists, don't perform the action.
But the principles.
And if I do it in filter from here, from this process, they don't see each other, and that's dangerous, right? You need to make a decision about, if I'm going to build something around process in one place, I need to do it in that place for process versus workflow. If I'm going to do it in filter and workflow, I'm doing that for PWA views and mid-tier UI, right? If I'm doing it for the UI here, I need to do that in the process here. The process and workflow are in.
Keep in mind, the principles of the remedy workflow on the filter side still apply.
Yeah.
Basically, on the filter side, that's your safeguard, no matter where it's coming from.
Yeah.
Filters will always kick in. The process side still adheres to that consideration. So
Right.
if that's going to be the only source in your environment by which you're going to submit something, then by all means, you can do your enforcement at that later. But if you are doing integrations, if you have other mechanisms or means that flow data into updating that form in the record, the place by which you would do your data enforcement would be at the filter level. That's why it's so important to understand that these are complementary of each other. This is not an either or, and they're not separate as it was before. This is designed and purpose built to be an extension of the Remedy platform, and the principles of the Remedy platform to apply or get the benefit of leveraging the process on the front.
So
The-
just to be clear, to clarify,
Yeah.
this insert statement still causes all filters to
Yes.
fire
That's right.
through the API.
The challenge that I'm pointing out is this process isn't aware of what the filters are doing. So if this process tried to do something that's opposing what the filters are doing, it'll try and do it. It'll fail because the filters will take precedence.
You'll never know it was the filter causing the accident.
That's right.
But let's be clear, that's no different than any other product that's out there trying to integrate with the Remedy platform. So if you wrote C code that was doing something, it knows nothing about what the filters are doing unless you're designing it. So the principles of coding still apply. Put in whatever you want to put on the front end, but the filters is your last gate. And that's where you enforce it, no matter where it's coming from. As long as you go through the API, all the filters require as they have.
In this UI that we will be here, it would be nice to give a nicer message to the user.
Exactly right.
Go ahead and leave it there.
Exactly
And
right.
then the filters will enforce.
Exactly right. Exactly right.
No,
No different,
Right.
excellent point. No different than active links and filters.
Right.
Right? Active links were done because I want to catch it at the time the person's doing it. But I never did that instead of filters. Right? I did it in addition because I wanted the interaction. Here on the process side, exactly right. That's where you have an opportunity to do a lot of different interactions, just as you would with active links, to have that end user experience coming in.
Yeah, I think they want me to repeat so people in the recording and online, I don't know if I don't know.
No, I think we can hear you, Darius, but I think,
Yeah, I think it was Michi's question that they couldn't hear necessarily. Or
I think-
we could hear a little bit of your answer.
Yeah, I think Michi's question was, shouldn't the innovation studio built UI do a better job understanding and throwing a better error than that, that awful CTM error? And yes, it should. And we have to build more capability to do that. And Darius's point is, very much like active links need to do that. We need to do that in the UI and in Innovation Studio. Innovation Studio does not use active links. It doesn't see the active links. So the Innovation Studio view, you have to rebuild that kind of capability as well in the view to understand those errors, to capture them. It does have, again, this was a demo that's meant to be built in an hour and a half from scratch. I could build this app from scratch. So I don't have all those fancy checks in place, but I should build them in. You're right.
So does this give us the same capability as we can do with active links, of changing colors of labels, of giving pop-ups, of changing a menu?
That's right. Yep.
More.
Permissions, how's it handled?
It follows all the permission model and everything. Yeah,
If I don't have access to a field here, I won't see it on here?
that's right. Yep. Yep, it follows a permission model. You can see the permissions in the administration area here.
You can't see permissions on the Innovation Studio?
Yeah, you should be able to.
You can't change it here, but you can see it.
You can change permissions if they're for the IS layer portion of it, the Innovation Studio built portion of it. You can set groups and permissions for IS layer apps.
You show it?
I don't know that I have a group set up here.
Or just field level permissions. I was curious to see what it looks like.
Well, if I want to go into set field level permissions into the app itself,
So that kind of leads to the same question, is all this data being stored in the Converged database as well? Your transactional data and the forms that you're creating in IS, they're all being stored in the same database as well. So
Yep.
Reverse that is true. If I go in ITSM, am I able to see and access those forms from an ITSM site? Or
I understand your question, yeah. You set permissions here, can you see it on the computer?
well, yeah, and or the data. I mean, is the data just as easily accessible in Dev Studio or whatever? Be able to leverage.
I can't
Back and
set,
forth.
no, I can't set field level permissions in Innovation Studio on form data because I can only access those forms since that exists in AR system, I have to do it there. If I built a record in IS, then I can set the permissions in IS for records that are built in IS.
So let me ask his question
Okay.
slightly different. I think I know where he's going with it. You're saying the data is stored in a converged database for both the IS portion as well as the ARS portion.
Yeah.
But what you're not saying is that there are correlating ARS forms for the Innovation Studio forms that are holding the data. It's in the same Oracle database, but it's not accessible necessarily from AR system to read the Innovation Studio things. Is that correct?
My understanding, you're not going to play whatever I say, so I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, and then, and Peter, others, please chime in. But the idea is that the remedy forms and information is stored in the remedy air system forms information. The constructs of a form are still managed and owned by remedy. The mechanism what IS provides is the ability to leverage that information, to tie into that information, tie into that data type. But the Innovation Studio in and of itself has its own space. Okay? It has its own means by which to create, establish, and put things in place. In order to build it, it has a means by which to create a record of its own, which is not necessarily to be confused with the fact that you created a record in the remedy table. If you chose to do that, then you would create a record in the remedy table to be stored in the form that's supported by that record. But at the IS level, you have the ability to store record as well. There's records at that level as well. That's why you can build an app that is in and of itself, but also ties in to the platform portion of this for the remedy data that's there in incident management, change management. And you have those two seamlessly work together because they're sharing the same space. Now, if you find a way to repeat everything I just said, we'll come to.
So that makes sense, and I'm seeing that from the Innovation Studio side of things, but I'm just wondering if the reverse is true from an ITSM standpoint. Can you leverage that? I mean, maybe with a vendor form or something along those lines.
So can you from remedy trigger a process of an innovation suite of triggering interaction?
No, he's asking, can you actually read the data?
Read the data, access. I mean, here you're reading it, access
Don't know
the
that you
data,
will.
updating the data, modifying
Can
the
you see a
data.
corresponding record in IS that you may have created from the remedy?
Correct.
Good question.
Yeah, I don't, we used to hide them.
Excellent question.
Yeah, we used to hide them. I don't know if they're hidden. The challenge you have if you start to use AR system to mess with the data structures that were created by IS, you could change them in a way that IS no longer recognizes them. And there's a danger. So we used to hide them so you didn't do that. But I don't know if we do anymore. I have to find out.
ITSM.
Right.
I mean, you could do something stupid there.
Right.
So I would offer.
I'll have to take a look. I don't know.
As was illustrated in the first part of the presentation, the communication and the interaction between the IS layer and remedy and remedy layer has evolved by leaps and bounds, even in the last 1 or 2 releases. Right? That evolution is
Still
continuing.
ongoing.
Is ongoing. So that's why I say it's a good question. If the means by which, if you were to do that, it's got to be in a way that protects us in the way that you just described, and therefore put the safeguards in place. Doesn't mean it won't be done. Doesn't mean it can't be done. But if they haven't done it yet, and it becomes a viable thing, it's a part of the evolution to say, let's figure out how to do that. Because the goal is for these to be collaborative and coexist to work together for those kinds of interactions, which is fundamentally different than, as we all know,
For what was previously, right. So, and again, kind of along those same lines, path forward, because Innovation Studio, you saw pieces of that kind of in Digital Workplace Advanced and different things. Like they've kind of merged, but now it seems like everything's kind of coming back together. So, I mean, Innovation Studio, Dev Studio, all of those kind of things. Kind of seems like you're gonna have to merge
Yes,
things a little bit at some point
yes,
where everything's more consistent.
yes.
But we don't have a plan yet for that. That can be disclosed in a.
This is where I point to him.
I don't think we have a specific timeline. I mean, we've started some of the consolidation already around the books, for example, foundation data. So we're going to do this in phases, right? Like some areas, like Dev Studio and Innovation Studio.
You kind of got competing things going, like Dev Studio's got, now you have progressive views and stuff going there, leverage and Angular, but this is leverage and Angular, so it's just hard for us to kind of know where we need to put our focus on stuff with, where everything's kind of merging, but not quite merged there yet, and that's why we get concerned about
So,
path forward, is just how do we develop things to stay.
so let me give you, a off the record, said quietly, so it can't be recorded. Suggestion. You're exactly right. You are absolutely right. We're in a stage where there's a convergence that's coming together, but at the same time, you got work to do. Right? You want to make decisions that don't put you into a corner that you end up having to undo later because of some things you put in place. What I would offer kind of as a guidance for where we are right now is there are certain things that we are still owned, managed, and governed at the remedy baseline level, incident management, change management, problem management, the tracking of tickets, the things that we do at that level, that we enforce at that level. Those are opportunities I would offer to be built to complement or extend those capabilities when you're trying to stay within the space of those particular products or extensions to those products, the PWA and things like that. Where Innovation Suite comes into play, at least for me, is one or two things. He's probably going to piss if I say this, but one or two things. One is you're building a solution that has a purpose, that is a focus, but it needs to interact with something that's at the ITSM set of applications layer. It's not an ITSM app, it's not an extension app, but it's making this a pay-per-click tracking thing the customer must have. I'm going to build something new. I'm going to build something that's a solution for a customer. Building an Innovation Suite. Okay? And if I need to tie into the data that's in running, I'm going to leverage the benefits it's doing. I'm going to build something new up in that time. The other area to consider is along the lines of what's been demoed. We've got administrators that are tired of dealing with the mid-tier views. I just want to put something clear in front of, on top of it, that gives me similar functionality with base capability. Third opportunity. There are cases and situations where we need to extend the system to end users because we need to have more distributed access to administer information in the system. I'm tired of my administrator being the single point of contact that has to take all this stuff from other people. I'd rather just put this out, put together a simplified interface so other people can do stuff.
So lines of business to manage their own data.
Exactly. I'm doing that in Innovation Suite. So those layers that put the GUI in there that I can put on top of that one, I'm doing that up in Innovation Suite in that area. Places that this is guidance. This may change soon as Peter changes something in the roadmap. Now, this is guidance that I would say for the things that are extensions to the core remedy platform, the ITSM solution, problem management, those are still anchored in things in remedy. If I need to extend or new capabilities to reinforce data, put something in place to extend the back end of that system, I'm going to do that.
I mean, all of this innovation is great, but it's painful too for customers that are trying to transition, and they've gone down one rate and now we're suddenly roadblocked with reporting or the different things that are migrating or changing. And I recognize you guys are trying to limit that pain point, but
As best we can.
and I think you guys recognize the pain too. There's change causes pain.
But it feels like.
I hope so.
Yes.
So can I ask a question? So is there going to be a change, and there might already be, I just don't know about it, in the licensing structure? Because what is preventing us, we have a bunch of custom apps that we have built in the Remedy platform. We are very limited in that because we cannot afford to buy all of these licenses for our users. So we're finding other vehicles to integrate what we want to do with our 12,000 users, 85,000 students, and 100,000 parents to interact with what we built on the back end of Remedy, whereas we would like to do something like this, but we just can't afford to. So is there change on how that model would work with organizations? Because that would be fabulous, because we've had Remedy for 22 years, so we'd like to keep expanding what we build in it because of we recognize the value in it.
So first of all, everybody has access or entitlement from a licensing perspective. It's from ITSM or it's through these custom app licenses. We'll be able to use both sides, right? The app system side as well as the innovation studio side. So these licenses entitled to the platform now has both things in it. And so if you're an ITSM user, you have access to their system before, now you have access to their system and business. So I think your question is slightly different. You're saying, I want to build an app that has a few power users, but then lots of students who are.
Yes.
The traditional licensing approach on our system side was if you only submit a record, update other people's records, right? You would be able to do that without an extra license. And that policy is still true. It's not true for the ITSM apps, but for the custom apps, that is still applicable. So you have to understand exactly what all these students and parents are doing, right? It's mostly about submitting their requests and checking what's going on. That in general would be covered as before through the free usage, right? If it's somebody who works the tickets, its records, etc., they would need a license.
But that's not traditionally true with like even digital workplace, right? Because there's licenses now associated with. So you got end users.
This is true. Well, the same was true by SRM, right? In SRM, you could argue people had some more records and then they're checking it, right? But you had to pay a license fee as an end user because you're using a fully made service catalog, the UI and everything, right? So even knowledge management, right? All of that was included in the self-service license. And it's a much lower price point than a typical worker license, right? So you're right. If you use BMC self-service apps, right, with the catalog, the knowledge access and everything, that does require license. I'm talking about custom apps. Right? So if somebody builds a custom app, and their end users were just submitting records and looking at them. Right? It's out of the free price.
And then this wasn't asked, but to kind of just make sure it's clear, in 21.3, we merged licensing. It used to be that Innovation Suite licensing was, because it was a different environment, was different than Remedy licensing. And you had to buy different licenses if you wanted to use both. In 21.3, we merged them. So now it's one set of licensing for everything. And if you have a ITSM suite that comes with the platform license, you can do all this without an extra license. It's part of it. And if you don't have ITSM suite and you want to just do AR, custom apps in IS or in AR, you buy just the platform license like you would have before, and it lets you do both with one license.
Probably should have mentioned that.
That would have been helpful to know.
Yeah.
One more question. Row-level security for multi-tenancy environment, is that still applying?
What did he? what's the
Row
question?
level security for multi-tenancy environment. Innovation. Okay, this is another interesting area. Innovation Suite used to have multi-tenancy with separate databases, but now now that because of convergence and we moved everything together, now the whole thing follows the Remedy model. So it follows the row level security model that's in Remedy. It follows the company-based multi-tenancy based on permissions modeling that's in Remedy. So the whole thing follows that same model, and we're going to continue to do that, right? We're gonna err on the side of the Remedy ITSM way of doing things because that's the king in this world, right? So that will always win because we don't want to break everybody that's out there.
We like that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Truly.
Do you have any other?
Yep. That's it.